Welcome to the London Property Podcast, your go-to source for navigating the complex and ever-changing London real estate market. Our digital marketplace provides informative and educational content from industry leaders through podcasts and videos. We cover various aspects of the real estate experience, including buying and selling, finance, law, tax, construction, design, and more. Join us as we delve into the latest trends and developments in the market and gain valuable insights from our panel of experts.
Hello and welcome to London Property. I'm your host Farnaz Fazaipour, and today we're doing our market update videos, and we're delighted to welcome back to the show Matt Smith. Welcome back.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to ask Matt to tell us a little bit about himself to put things into context for you, about where his experience comes from, and then we'll dive right in.
Well, I've been an estate agent for 25 years now. Pretty much worked all over London from Highgate down to Clapham. And West London. At the moment, my partner Chris and I have Smith & Erickson, which we've been running for 5 years now, doing sales and lettings. Previously, before that I was at Knight Frank, and before that I was at Goldschmidt and Howland up in Hampstead, and a few places, in between over the years.
So you've got a fair amount of experience, we'd say.
I'd like to think so.
And so what would you say is the one thing that's really shouting out at you about what's going on in the market at the moment?
Well, the market has been very frantic, frankly. I mean, from over the last couple of years, obviously we've seen very high interest rates by comparing it to what has been the norm, I guess, since the credit crunch back in 2008. I think we've seen a period where people are having to come to terms with what is now the new normal and what I think going forward will be a typical interest rate, which very much affects affordability. And people who might have been looking to buy, a £2 million house are probably now looking at a £1.35 million property, which is a very, very different offering. And so buyers are having to come to terms with what they can afford, and sellers are coming to terms with what their property is probably actually worth. It's always difficult in London because a lot of people own properties outright and will only sell at the right price. So it takes a long time for prices to shift properly, significantly.
There's a lot of holding, isn't it? London has a habit of, people are always saying market's going to come down, and we're always thinking, no, it's just going to go flat until you come back to buying.
That's right.
It's sort of such a on repeat scenario,
Absolutely.
Isn't it? That
100%.
What always happens.
Yeah.
And are you seeing any change in the buyer profiles? Are you actually seeing that there's a lot more locals versus overseas buyers, or is it just not a lot happening, full stop?
Well, I think some of the conversations that I've been having in the last few weeks have been more about people leaving London, wanting to sell up to leave London to buy somewhere else. We've seen a lot of people moving to Italy, a lot of people moving to Dubai or even UAE, just looking to, I guess, go where markets seem hotter or the tax seems more appealing. I guess it remains to be seen whether we're going to see a lot of influx of wealthy Democrats coming from the States. And we've seen, frankly, I think since Brexit, we've seen a significant drop in people moving here from Europe. So, yes, I would say there has been a big change, not just in the last few weeks, but in the last few years. Local markets remain strong, people who are from London or from the UK and are buying properties to upsize or downsize. People have to move, people are born, people die, people get divorced, so there's always a local market, I think. But I think we have seen and are going to continue to see less or fewer, should I say, overseas buyers for the next period ahead. Not to mention the non-dom status having changed.
So I was going to ask you, so the people who are talking about leaving, are they people who are either coming towards retirement age or pre-children? Are you noticing that there is a demographic?
Actually, I think the people that I've seen mostly leaving are people who aren't actually from the UK. So they've lived here for however long, or or they have investment properties here. I think they are looking at selling up. I think, there's unfortunately the crime rates. I'm originally from South Africa, so I always thought London was ridiculously safe. But recently, I've lived here for 28 years now, I think, and recently crime has gone off the scale, and there's a reputation, I think, from overseas buyers that London's not a safe place to be. Not where you don't want to wear some nice jewelry or a nice watch, or you drive your sports car, and I think that's also driving people to look elsewhere, safer sorts of countries. Not that I'd want to live in places like, personally anyway, Dubai or Singapore, but they are seen as being very safe. That you wouldn't commit a crime there because the repercussions would be a lot worse.
I mean, it's not uncommon. I think what's happening is that people whose lifestyles are not connected to the UK are what the press are reporting.
Yes.
I'm leaving. It's
yes.
like, okay, but you were probably going to leave anyways, and you were always planning to only be here for a set period of time. So people whose lifestyles are connected are not really pulling up their roots and saying, oh, okay, for tax reasons, I'm going to now pull up my whole family structure and move it to somewhere where, the tax is better for now. Because taxes can change anyway.
They can, and you're absolutely right. People might talk about leaving, but when you're actually going through what you'd have to do to, move your entire family, kids in schools, friends, support structure, it's a big deal. So I think people like to talk about, oh, I'm leaving if this happens, but they probably won't.
But the reality is that there's a lot of advisors making a lot of money right now. And then at the end of that, you probably find, the demographics that would leave are the ones with no roots and connections formed yet, or just the ones who actually are done with London. They were going to go anyway.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's the very, very wealthy are extremely mobile, and they have properties in multiple countries. So they might just move around more or spend less time in the UK. So I think that's a reality, but I think the majority, the mainstream market, is not upping sticks and moving.
No. And I think the super wealthy also, it's part of their actually things to do.
Yeah.
Is to do that, right?
That's
where
right.
shall I go now?
Exactly.
It's going to be more beneficial. I was at the private banks event the other night, and one of the things that they were saying is that, leaving the UK in your private jet to be away at midnight is no longer enough on its own. You've got to be 12 nautical miles away as well.
Really?
So, it's like the tweaking of the super rich tax planning is keeping a lot of people really busy, I think.
Exactly.
And what have you noticed? And I know that you have had a lot of experience in the new developments that overseas buyers are buying. And are you seeing that there needs to be a bit of a rescue plan for what to do with all these new developments, or is there a shift? Are they all holding on and renting? I mean, what would you say about these kind of, traditionally we build off plan, they buy them, and it was a model that was on repeat?
Yeah, there's been so much development in London over the past 15 odd years or so. And a lot of the people that bought those properties were overseas investors, and they paid a huge amount of money for them, very often way above the local pounds per square foot prices, and are unable to sell them at a profit, and almost certainly selling them at quite a significant loss, especially when you take stamp duty into account. So those buyers, those owners, are now landlords, and they rent very, very well. There seems to be an endless supply of tenants for these sorts of properties. So touching on what I was saying earlier, these people often own them outright, and they won't sell at a loss. It was an investment, so they'll hang on. Sometimes you'll get a seller who would rather take that money that they put into a property and make it work better elsewhere. So they will sell at a loss because they know they'll make that up in some other investment. But the majority of people are just holding them and renting them out, and they do rent out very, very well. So I think it's the idea of buying off plan has changed a lot. Because it used to be, going back a way now, let's say before 2008, that you'd buy something off plan and you could probably sell it 2 or 3 times before it even completed at a profit. Those days are long gone, and I think the reality has set in that it's about like buying a new car. As soon as you drive it off the forecourt, you can knock 30% off, and I think that's frankly what I think buying a lot of brand new properties means as well.
Yeah. And also, I think that, locals, if they could get their head around living in something that's not really very British.
Well, I think that's changed a lot over the last few years.
Another rescue plan, right?
Yeah. Well, I think more and more British people are actually, especially with energy costing what it does now, people are quite keen on moving into new build properties. But the repercussions of Grenfell and a lot of the horror stories that we've heard about these newish properties that have dangerous cladding and extremely high service charges has scared a lot of people. I'd be very wary of buying a modern flat without doing some very serious investigation as to ground rent, which can escalate and can actually cause problems with when borrowing money, getting a mortgage. And service charges are a big issue. When you buy a house, you've got a freehold house, there's no service charges, but then of course you've got the upkeep of the house. So there's pros and cons, but you have to be very well advised and careful when buying a modern property these days.
Yeah. Well, we're waiting for the leasehold reform to actually be implemented. So it'll address some of those issues that you mentioned, like the escalating ground rents, which I think they're saying it's going to be illegal for house builders to do that.
Yeah. For new ones, though, not existing. That's going to be very difficult for existing properties.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask you the question, although I think that historically, over the past couple of years, we've realized that this is a kind of a non-question. But if you were to predict what's happening in 2025, what would you say?
I think that in the last couple of weeks, inflation has not gone down as expected. The budget that Rachel Reeves recently brought out has meant that interest rates are probably not going to drop quite as quickly as we thought they were, unlikely to go below 4%. However, life goes on. Most of this year has been a write-off. There's been a bit of a pre-Christmas bump. I think a lot of that comes to do with people trying to get properties sold before the budget, which I think gave a bit of a bounce. But I think that we're going to slow down over Christmas, and probably in late January, we're going to see the market pick up a lot. I don't think that we're going to see a huge amount of sales necessarily go through in the first quarter, because a lot of properties take a lot longer to go through. But I think by the summer, we'll start to see some positive results on the figures, on the percentages of sales agreed. There's a lot more properties coming to the market. There's a lot more offers around. And I think prices are going to continue in a lot of cases to creep down a little bit, I think, as sales, as the market finds its level. But I do think that transactions are going to improve, and I don't think prices are going to be shooting up.
So before we thank you for coming here and sharing your insight, I just wanted to ask you one more question, which is, have you noticed any particular type of properties doing better than others? Are people more into houses, flats, or certain areas are surprising you?
What I have noticed is that if you take on a house, you are inundated with inquiries. If you take on a flat, less so. I think, they're not making any more family houses in prime central London, and I think those are always going to be very much in demand. And I'm talking about the sort of up to £2 million demographic, so let's say 1.5 to 2 million. Houses like that, Parsons Green, Fulham, places like that, I still think are doing. There's a big demand. Less so, I think, sort of Belgravia, Knightsbridge, Mayfair. Less demand than typical, I feel.
It's changing. And actually it goes back to what you were saying, which is if you get a house, then at least you know that so long as you look after your property well, you haven't got a fixed outgoing of service charges, etc., etc.
That's
so
right.
it makes a difference to people.
Yeah.
Okay, well, great. Thank you very much for coming
Pleasure.
to see us
Thank you
today.
for
It was
having me.
great to have you, and we'll look forward to having you back again on the show for next market updates.
Lovely. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. So if you are looking to either sell or buy in London, we speak to a lot of experts who specialize in niche areas and for niche properties, and do get in touch with us so we can guide you and point you in the right direction.
Thanks for tuning in to our latest episode of the London Property Podcast. Head over to our website where you can browse our exclusive network of top experts driving the market. As a member, you'll have direct access to our experts and their networks. Our award-winning content will help you choose the right professionals for your needs and make informed decisions about your investments. Personal recommendations are a powerful tool in connecting with trusted professionals. Let us introduce you to the right people to help you achieve your real estate goals. Contact us now to learn more about becoming a member and gaining access to these valuable resources, or joining our directory of experts.